Hi, this is Dr. MJ coming to you from beautiful Boston, Massachusetts. This is the Women in Dentistry podcast, where we feature women in dentistry making waves and leading the industry through the next decade. I am your host, Dr. Mary Jane Hanlon, a former dental assistant, dental hygienist, and now dentist. I am very pleased to introduce you today to Ms. Susan Ferrante. Susan is a dental hygienist and currently the School and Government Regional Manager for ADEC Incorporated. She is responsible for strategies and programs that maximize the company's sales efforts in dealing with dental education institutions in the U.S., Canada, and the federal government facilities worldwide. For over 23 years in sales, her main focus has been developing and fostering strong relationships with academic programs. Prior to joining ADEC, Susan's sales experiences included academic interfacing positions managing accounts in dental schools, dental hygiene programs, and other allied dental education programs and government facilities. Currently, she is a board member representing the Corporate Council for the American Dental Education Association and the Chief Executive Officer of CRET, the Center for Research in Education and Technology. It is indeed my pleasure now to bring you to my interview with Ms. Susan Ferrante. Susan, I am so excited to have you join me today on the podcast, and I can't wait for everyone to understand what you have done in the field of dentistry and how you got into it. So without any further ado, I'd love for you to share your story about how you got into the field, and then we can go from there. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to our channel, and also don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss out on a single episode. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you, MJ, for having me. Yes. Okay. I'm honored to be here. You know, my story is a little bit different than most on how I ended up from dentistry and then into sales. Actually, I always knew that I wanted to do something in the medical field, but I didn't know what it was. And my mom had a good friend that was a dental hygienist. Chatted with her. I was very intrigued by dental hygiene, just the stories and her passion on how she interacted with people, and it was all about healthcare. And so I headed that direction. After practicing clinically for 13 years, I had neck and shoulder problems. I'm actually left-handed. And many years ago, when I went to school, because of the configuration of the equipment, I had to learn with my right hand. So muscle fatigue and just, the lack of fully developed in my right hand, I needed to choose another direction. And I wanted to do something that I thought would make a difference. But also, I realized that I had good people interaction skills. So in coming to that fork in the road, I needed to make a decision. So I ended up going into sales and sales management. And here I am today.
Wow. So what was it like? I mean, did you love the profession of dentistry? And what was it like for you to have to give that up?
I really enjoyed it. It was fulfilling for me. I'm a very overachiever type person. I work for a very high-end practice. I had a great relationship with the dentist that I worked with. It was like lockstep when we would work. And so for me, it was very difficult to make that realization. Something really funny is the fact that I thought, okay, I worked in a high-end practice. I could go work for a pediatric dentist now. It wouldn't be so bad. But, there's a mindset there, not to say that it was wrong. It just wasn't for me. And I think when looking at the different options, I thought, you know what, I've really enjoyed this. I wanted to make sure that whatever I did, it was sales in the dental field and using my knowledge and background and on all of my experience. And how did I bring that forward? So it was disheartening because it was really sad. The one thing I will say is when I was hired by ADEC today, I was their first hygienist as a salesperson, which is kind of interesting. First clinical person that they ended up hiring. Yeah. So
now, how long have you been with ADEC?
It's going to be 11 years.
Wow. And you're the first clinical person they hired?
First hygienist in the field for field sales.
Wow. Isn't that interesting? I'm surprised it took them that long. You would think that they would love to have somebody that understands the industry of dentistry and understands what dentists really need and hygienists really need to work with.
Well, what the interesting thing is, I think their proximity to OHSU for being very close to the dental school. Any of their R&D or development, they really had a nice pool to be able to draw from, and they had a good pulse of that. And I think when you look back at core equipment in general on being something that a female person might not be in that type of sales, right? I think it's a mindset too. So, I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed that aspect of being in the field, and then ended up coming up to manage the team and being the sales manager.
So congratulations. That's unbelievable, because as most people know, being a leader and a female leader in a male dominated profession is not an easy thing to do. And I'm sure that you've had your fair share of, obstacles to overcome in that. And we can talk a little bit more about that later, but what was it like to go through that for you? And is this the first role you've had outside of dental hygiene private practice?
No. Actually, I worked for a couple of other companies. I worked for a loops company. I worked for Euclid. I was the academic relations manager for Colgate Palmolive, and then over on into an ADEC.
Wow.
I've enjoyed every position that I've had. All of the positions were really geared towards sales, towards academia. So dental schools, dental hygiene programs, hospital accounts, and the military. So and all of the different steps in companies, it's always been the same group of folks, which is for some reason a comfort zone for me.
Which is great, because you could speak their language. I mean, you went through a professional school and you can speak their language. And I think that that's one of the reasons that it makes it so easy for us to work together, because it's nice to have somebody that understands the academic part of it. It's very different from private practice, right?
Very different. And I think, when I look at ADEC, which I'm grateful for, is the aspect that even though they have folks that are geared towards the academic part, they do bring that private practice piece. So, I think you notice that we always have two people that call on the school, or there's more than one person. So I think it's having an understanding from so many different aspects. I think when we look today at dental schools and you look at the students, and so many of them might have questions, they might need guidance. And I think some of that with our local person that comes along, they have that sense of being able to, I can help you, I can guide you a little bit. Sometimes they get questions, sometimes they don't, but it's always knowing that there's somebody there to be able to help you.
Well, I think that that's one of the best things about a great company, is being able to provide guidance and support to the teams, no matter what it is. Being able to have that comfort in that relationship to call and say, oh my gosh, this is happening. Do you have any idea what this is from? Because I know in my own practice, I really respected and loved working with, the sales team that was supportive of me in the field, and what I was trying to do with my practice.
Yeah, I think it's very important. We're still a family-owned company, which is...
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, it's very unique nowadays, right? But I think when you look back, two people that started at Ken and Joanne Austin really put together a set of principles and guidelines to how business should be conducted, how people should be treated, how do we value everyone. And, that's very different today when you look at little companies being kind of consolidated or bought up by some of those larger publicly traded companies. I've worked for a publicly traded company, nothing bad about that. I've worked for private companies. There's just a different sense and feel, and having just a more intimate relationship with everyone on that personal. I think even when walking through the factory, people know who you are. Oh, Susan, hey, I worked on that project for you. And really the sense, and I have to say there's such a sense of pride, because as an example, if they knew that there was a dental school or a program that had a remodel, I worked on those chairs. If they say, did you go to that school? I worked on, so the folks inside and even to the folks outside, there's really a sense of camaraderie, and just, it's a family, it's a family, which is really unique and remarkable today.
It sure is. And I will say that the one thing that is critically important to businesses, I think across the board, at least, from what I've been able to see in evaluating different businesses along, through the many years, is that development of culture and that development of family. And I do know that we have that at Tufts as well. that feeling of, yeah, we're one family here, Tufts Jumbo, everybody lives and breathes elephants, but that's just part of our history and our heritage, that, we are Jumbo strong, and it just is a great thing when you have a good culture.
Yep, 100% correct. It really means a lot. And, it's kind of interesting now, and I mentioned earlier, the grandson is now reports to me. He's on my team. So it's really nice to have a different perspective, third generation, and, they're still keeping it strong. And, it's funny because we know them as the founders, Ken and Joanne Austin, but to him, it's grandma and grandpa. So it's kind of neat to have that family piece of it that, it brings a realization to it as well.
Well, and what a great thing for a young person to see how much their parents have had an impact on an industry, because there isn't anybody in dentistry that doesn't know ADEC chairs. There isn't anybody. I mean, just the knowledge of that company is international, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's really nice to have that, depth and breadth throughout the world. As part of not only institutions here in the U.S., but the team that I manage, we also are in charge of the federal government worldwide. So whether I'm in another country or you're someplace and we have field sales reps around the world, it's really interesting to see what the take is in other parts of the world when you travel there. So it's pretty unique. It's pretty unique.
That's incredible. So what do you think contributes the most to their culture at ADEC? Maybe what value or characteristic do you think?
You know what? I think it's their, we have guiding principles called the ADEC way. And there's 15 principles, but, the one that always stands out is the concern for people. And truly, they do have a concern for people. Even what we've been through as of late, their biggest, I want to say, focus has always been on the people. How do we do the right thing by the people? And there's so many different things but I look at that one. I look at their care and concern for others, doing business in a very, with integrity, so many different things, and doing the right thing, right? And you don't hear that too often. What is the right thing to move forward, to take care of a customer, to build the next design? What is the right thing? What is needed? And I think so much of that really has a huge impact on how they treat each other, how they treat their customers, how we treat our suppliers. It's just part of the culture.
Right, and it resonates everywhere.
It resonates everywhere. Something interesting, which I always keep, it's just kind of funny. Our COO always talks about the cards that we have, and it's about our mission and vision, and kind of always having it. We want to ensure that whatever we do, that we have a superior customer experience. It's about the customer in the end, whether the customer is private practice, whether the customer is an education institution, or it's a federal account, even a DSO, and really so much of what they do from their mission, it's just making, everyththing they do is for the betterment of dentistry worldwide. So, it's not a knee-jerk reaction to come to the market with something. Everything is very well thought out, kind of looking from a holistic view, which is really important.
Wow. So if you were to go back to the beginning of your career, what do you think you learned the most about being a woman in a male-dominated profession? What do you think you learned early on that you needed to be or do that you could help share with other young women who might be thinking about going into sales roles?
You know what, I'm going to say this. I think, when I started 20 years ago, the interesting thing, I think it was more difficult to be taken at face value, right? It always says that women have to prove what they can sell or their knowledge or their background. And often in some instances, men are taken at face value. And I hate to use the phrase because they're a man, there's a mindset or mentality. And I think what I learned is, it was constantly, I had to prove myself. I really had to prove myself that you're a female, you can't do it. It's too much. You know what? You think 20 years have passed and it would make a difference, but there's still those times that you have to prove yourself. And I think it was a struggle at first. I have a habit of always being kind of uber prepared and kind of always thinking, okay, what are they going to throw at me for different presentations, or what are they going to throw at me for presenting today? And kind of always having my kind of ducks in a row making sure that I'm kind of focused on what I need to have ready. But I think that it was really being taken seriously for my knowledge and my depth and my experience. I really had to prove myself. And I think learning from that, I think it was difficult. I think today it's a little bit different, but I think it was a challenge back then. And you know what? If you really know I hate to say this, if you know your stuff, don't be afraid to say you know your stuff. Even if you're at a meeting, if you know it, you know it. And don't hide behind the fact that I really don't want to speak up. You know what? You're there. You have a voice. Speak up if you know it.
Use it. Exactly.
And use it.
Yeah, exactly. Use it. Sheryl Sandberg has said that in her book, lean in. Don't sit in the back of the room. Sit at the table. Make sure you're part of the conversation, because if you're not, they're not going to pay any attention to you, and you're just going to be discounted right away. So you've got to raise your voice, and you've got to speak your mind and know your stuff. And I agree with you. I feel like many times women are discounted, or used to be that way. I don't find it that much.
Not as much anymore. No,
not as much anymore. But that we were discounted. But and there were times when I was told that I wasn't smart enough to do something, and by a man. And gosh, don't tell me I can't do something, because I'm going to show you I can do it. And I think that we do have to have that mentality, that mental toughness that says, you know what? Okay, I might have made a mistake today, but don't worry. I'm going to be prepared for the next time, and I will come with knowing everything I need to know about whatever it is that it's supposed to be. So.
Yeah, and you know what? The other thing too is, I think that as I morphed and I went into field sales at ADAC, it is a male-dominated. It's just the way it is. It's male-dominated, and I had male counterparts that I had to work with, and I'm sure, and nobody's ever said it to me. I got to work with her today. I'm sure, right? That's a little slight, but you know what? I'm going to tell you, to this day, when I was in the field, I've earned all of their respect. And even though I'm not their manager, I don't work with them, I get calls from some of those guys all the time, just checking in. How you doing? How's everything? I think you earn their respect. You show up, you be present, you input to knowledge that you have, and you gain their respect. It's not that much today. It's very, very different. I think when I first started, it was much tougher.
I agree. If 20 years ago it was still tough, and 30 years ago, there's some stories that would make the hair stand on your back that I've heard from some of the women that I've interviewed. And, so much so that, they were intimidated by men in dental school, saying, you're taking the spot of another man. What are you doing here? Why are you wasting our time? I mean, that to me is borderlines on bullying. Now we wouldn't tolerate it, but back then, women couldn't say anything because the men ruled the world. So, and that's okay. That's okay. I'm so glad that we're beyond all of that. I mean, it's part of all of our evolution, right? Male and female evolution.
Absolutely.
Was there an obstacle that you can think of that was really hard to overcome, but you're really proud that you did?
I really do think it's just really persevering. And I think being now and in the last, not even the last several years, I think from persevering, just now being recognized for the same accomplishments as my equal male counterparts. I look and I say at ADAC, I am the only female regional manager that we have. We sit at the table. You have a great year. We're all recognized for that great year. We're recognized for our efforts, for the aspects behind it. So I think even leading up to this point with ADAC and other companies, I think when there is something that kind of along the way, just to be recognized in that equality aspect of it. It wasn't that way all the time. I mean, I think back. It's so funny when we're talking. I think back to a situation about several years back, and I went to a construction meeting at a school. And, it was a renovation, and I go there with my local territory manager, and contractor totally dismissed me and said, girlie, sit down, girlie, this is not for you. And I was beyond shocked. I turned to the local territory manager's male, and he just shook his head. And the contractor approached him, and he looked right at the contractor, and he says, you have no idea. She is the one with all the answers. So you better ask her what you want. And so it was interesting to think, even in this day and age, that there are people with that closed-minded mentality. And, and that's my aspect of just coming prepared. You want the answers? I have the answers. It's,
But you have to ask me the question. Don't ask somebody else.
Don't ask somebody else. You want the answers? I'll give you the answers. So it's interesting. I think, and it was so funny because the local guy just shook his head and he just said, "Oh, I can't believe he went that." It was in disgust. It was kind of in a disbelief that, she's here. She's got all the information. She's the one walking around with the plans. She's the one with all the notes. So, interesting things I think that we've overcome. But, I think it makes you stronger. The next meeting you go into, and I think the funny part in this whole story, that as this project moved along, as we got towards the end of it, I'd come to the meeting and people would look at me and ask, okay, what's the answer to that? And I'm like,
so that guy was eating crow right away, wasn't he?
totally ate crow.
Good for you. Good for you. I love it. I love it. So, those experiences make us tougher a little bit. And, we're expected to not be quiet, but we're expected to be subtle in our knowledge sometimes, I think, and not to overshare because, that may not be the best. But I think that if we hold ourselves back, that we're limiting our ability to expand and improve ourselves. And, I see other younger women, even in the school, not sharing what they might have shared with me in a bigger group where there might be more men. And I have mentored them to say, you know what, you can't hold back. No matter where you are, you have to be able to speak what you know, and you speak your truth because that's a part of who you are, and you're here for a reason. Use it.
Right. Yeah, and they were chosen to be there, right? They were chosen to be there. So they have qualities that makes them worthy of being there. And I think sometimes women, we have a tendency to kind of withdraw and have a little bit of that silence because we don't want to overstep. I think that's just what it is. I'm really fortunate. My sister is a VP of HR at her company. And we share a lot. She's my sounding board sometimes. She's my confidant. We're close. She's been a friend of mine forever because she knows me probably more intimately than most people. But, I ask her a lot of those questions because she does a lot with women's groups and women's leadership groups, and she attends those regularly. But, and I even have asked her, being a VP, very difficult, to be able to, over this last break of being home and kind of her thinking and doing things, she recognizes that some of the other male VPs are treated very differently than her. And it's, you kind of say, okay, but she's been a good person I think for me in general, also being faced with some of those same challenges. So it's not going to ask people at the company about that. It's asking somebody else in a different manner that, we kind of bounce things off, and she's guided me really well through the years.
Well, I do think that that's so true. I think that we have to find other like-minded women that we can feel free to have those really poignant questions and answer sessions with each other, because who else are you going to ask? There aren't, I'll even speak for myself. When I first arrived at Tufts, there were no women in the senior leadership when I was there. And I was one of the first ones. I'd go to the deans and chairs meetings, and there wasn't any other women in the room. And then Maria Papageorge started to come, and those meetings started to improve. But quite honestly, it was, I felt in the beginning, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? But, over time, you realize, what, I'm here because they needed my guidance on certain things, and, they want me here. So I do think we do hold ourselves back a lot, and we have to be able to teach that. I do think, also that we need to be able to show the way to other young women and show them that they can do it. It might be a little bit easier today than it was for us when we were growing through this profession, but I do think it's getting easier as time moves on.
I think it is getting easier. And, I really wish that a lot of these young women that have questions or have things, that they see somebody maybe that they admire or that they've aspired to something, and they ask those questions. I don't, people are approachable. And no, and I really believe that if somebody came to me and asked me something, I'd be more than happy to tell them anything. I kind of look back that even when you had to hire people or interviewing, and you would interview people, and I think later on, either they didn't get the job or you gave them some words of wisdom or advice, and just something that would be normal conversation. I've had people come up to me and said, you told me this, or you gave me this point, and that stuck with me, and that's why I went in this direction. And you think to yourself, wow, but you don't realize, I think people do not realize the little bit of an impact something that you say can have, or the big impact that they can have. And some people hold things and take things, and there are people out there that have this information. And I don't think that anybody should feel intimidated to approach somebody and say, how did you get there? Or what's your story about? Or what does that look like? Really, I do feel blessed and very fortunate because I really enjoy what I do. And, to have that and to be able to say that, I'm very lucky.
Yeah, people that are good at what they do, you can hear it, the passion in their voice, and I certainly can hear the passion in your voice.
So, and for me to really enjoy it, and if somebody has a question, how did you get there? Please ask me. I had somebody say to me, I know that ADAC doesn't hire a lot of women. Why? And I thought to myself, why? And I said, well, we do have a lot internally, we have, but in the field sometimes, because this is equipment, you got to be on the floor and you got to look at utilities. And I told this person, I said, you know what, here's the problem. Just do your job. Just do your job. Don't complain. Don't do anything. Don't make it special that you're a female. Just do your job. And, I think it's sometimes, and she actually said, thank you. She said, it was pretty simple. And I said, you know what? I've never, ever, ever wanted somebody to say, well, I hate to say this phrase, she pulled the woman card. I'm not pulling any woman card, right? Because you've heard that, oh, she's going to pull the female card and it's going to exempt her from doing this. That's not what it's about. You know what? This is a job you were hired for. This is what you should do. You have any questions? I told her, Lifeline, you need me? Call me. Happy to answer the phone any single time. I think, but, once somebody gets in that and they understand that, it's fine. And, you don't know the culture that other companies do. And, I think we've all worked for people that you kind of think to yourself, oh, that's just a bad representation of interaction and
or bad culture, or
I hope somebody's not modeling you. You kind of think that. So I think in the times that you can offer somebody any word of advice, any way that you can help them, I always say, call me. Anything you need, call me. I've had people call me, not even working for ADAC, that have asked me questions. And you don't know what the culture, exactly, you don't know what that culture is like in their own company. But I think, there's a network of people. It's really interesting, right? We all belong to, from a corporate perspective, we all go to meetings and there's, corporates that are on one side, educators on another. So there's a group of us that are always together. I think you just end up forming friends with a lot of these folks, talking through issues, and you need a lifeline, you need a support line. And I think that's what makes people stronger, and also realize that they're not the only ones sometimes struggling with some of these issues. There's people out there that everyone has the same thing.
without a doubt. And I think you've made a very valuable point. If you need guidance, ask. Just ask. Don't be afraid, just take the chance and ask. I do think that there are women out there that don't put a hand back and don't support one another. And I do hope we're getting to the end of that era, because, that protectionist mentality where I want to protect my turf, you know what, there's enough turf for everybody. Your little piece of the world is not what I want. Don't be afraid. And the more you share, the better your world gets, I think. I think that it's critically important to share the wealth and everything.
You know what? I agree with that. I agree. I think we've all worked with people or for people that had and you kind of say, I don't ever want to be like that, right? And so I think that's what you take away with and say, I don't want to be like that. And so, how you interact with other people, I think you take those experiences with you and say, I want to be better than that.
Absolutely. So what's the single best piece of advice you've gotten as a woman? And just the best piece of advice doesn't mean, a man gave it to you, a woman, it doesn't matter. But, what's the single best piece of advice you've gotten career-wise in your lifetime?
You know what? I think it had to be way back when I kind of transitioned from dental hygiene to sales. I think sometimes when you change careers or when you move a step in your career, there's always the fear of the unknown, right? We always kind of think to ourselves, oh, how am I going to do this, right? Because those are the mental games that go on in your head. How am I going to do this? How am I going to get over this? What if it happens if they ask me this? What happens if they ask me that? And I was very fortunate to have a wonderful first manager that I worked with. And he said to me, you know what? Use your strengths. He said, and people don't want to be sold, they want to be educated. And he said,
oh my gosh, that's a great phrase. People don't want to be sold, they want to be educated.
they want to be educated. He said, if you educate them, the sales will come because you did your job on informing them on why product A or product B is the right thing for them. And you know what? That had stuck with me from the beginning. And I think a lot of that has to do with my success as a salesperson, because I always have that in the back of my mind. You know what? It's not a matter of the sale. I want to educate you on the choice that you're going to make, and then you make the choice. I'm not going to make the choice. You're going to make the choice. And, I always think back to, even when I go to make a large purchase, I think we all do. And, kind of in my mind, I'm like, they left that out or they left that out. And, what I think we look at it from both sides. So for me, when he said, people don't want to be sold, they want to be educated, I looked at that and I've kind of conducted myself in sales all along the way with that same piece of advice. And I think that was so important back then. It made a lasting impression for all these years, and I've never forgotten it.
No, that's a great piece of advice. I'm going to pass that on. Actually, you're going to pass that on through this podcast. So thank you so much. Who has made the biggest impact, do you think, on your lifetime career in dentistry?
In dentistry, I mentioned my sister earlier, and she's not in dentistry. And,
You can use her.
I have two, kind of thinking through this as we're talking. She makes me look at myself the way people see me, not the way I see myself. And I think that's important to have that as well. Sometimes I always would, and she's my sounding board. So I bounce things off of her and I kind of think of my limit to my potential on where I'm going to go. And she'd say, it's limitless. Why are you putting a limit on where you can go? And, I think everybody needs somebody like that to truly say, no, you know what? We're going to jump over this hurdle. Here's how we're going to do it. Let's have a plan. And, I'm blessed to have that. And my sister, I joke around, she's my life coach. I have a personal life coach that I don't really have to pay too much for.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe a bottle of wine here or there.
And that works out very well.
Perfect.
But I think when you look in dentistry, I was thinking about this because Dr. Laura Joseph, she was my little sister when I went to hygiene school. And I kind of watched her career through the years. I still know her very well. She was a dental hygienist. She was an educator. She was a program director, and she's now provost at the school that she's at. And I kind of look back and kind of look at how she just kept moving onward. She just didn't stop. She just kept moving. But she did it with such grace and humility and just matter of fact. I mean, it was role model worthy, I think, just the way she carried herself. And I think that when you look at people in dentistry sometimes and how they progressed or how they ended up getting to where they are, it's not the bull in the china shop. I think it's all along people like my friend Laura that just kind of inched her way along. She used her knowledge. She kind of used her, and it's just, here's my next step, and here's my next step. And I think that's very admirable. So from two different sides of the house, I think I have my sister from really having that, my cheerleader, and I have somebody that I look to and admire on how they conducted themselves to get where they are.
Which is amazing. I do think that those silent ones are the most potent ones, that they just lead by example. I have a great story that I tell about my dad, who was epitome of a workaholic, but he never told us once that we had to go to work or that we should work or that we should work hard. He just led by example. And we mentally, I don't think, had a choice that we all were going to work hard just because that's what you do. That's what we were taught, right? That's what we did. And, it's leading by example. I think the silent ones are the most potent ones, and they do lead lives that anybody would be proud of, because, just doing it every day, not saying anything about it, not boasting, not, making any, ill-gotten claims. It's just they're doing it every day in and day out.
That's right. Yeah.
So when you reflect back, would you describe yourself as a confident woman? In your early years, even as a hygienist, and then moving through your, sales career, would you consider yourself a confident woman?
I'm not confident by nature. I'm not. I think for me, when I look back from the aspect of dental hygiene, I really enjoyed that, right? And I was good at it, right? So sometimes when you're good at it, you end up having more confidence, which is great. But I think for me, I think I have to really gain my confidence a little bit by having a drive and just a sense of accomplishment. Even now, for me, probably still have to prepare and get that confidence going before I walk into a meeting. I work hard a lot of hours. I think, so many people do that today, right? We work and we work and we work. I over prepare. I kind of make sure that I have it all done. And I think that's what fuels me to have the confidence. I think it's just being very prepared. I kind of look at relevant information, what's new or relevant now, what I'm going to need in the future. I'm just a little bit of an overachiever. I have a little problem with that. But I think it's the education and the preparedness that really drives my confidence and really kind of fuels me to kind of walk in a room and give a presentation or conduct some of the meetings or be on different calls. But by nature, I don't have that confidence. I think it was really learned and kind of achieved for me just through my actions.
And developed over the course of your career.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I do think that it's every step that we take along the way helps to build a piece of that confidence block, if you will. But I do think that for 99% of us, that confidence, even with men, is not something that's innate to us. I think that imposter syndrome sits, I call them Mo and Schmo, it's the voices in your head that are always going back and forth and, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you're not worthy of this, you're not worthy of that, blah, 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 blah. Someday you just have to shut those guys off and just ignore them, because bottom line is you can do this, and don't let anybody tell you you can't. So
don't let anybody tell you can't. And it's just being prepared too.
I love the education piece too. Even during this COVID time, I saw that so much anxiety existed, that if people just educated themselves to a higher level as to what exactly the virus is, how to prevent you from getting it, and what you need to do, even from a personal level, to make sure that you stay healthy, it relieves anxiety, right? And it's just all about education.
Yep, all about education.
Yeah, the more education you have, the more confident you feel, and you can move on.
Yep, absolutely.
Good. Anybody in dentistry specifically inspire you?
I'm going to say, I think along the way, we've all met people that have been influential, right? I mean, they're influential in life and influential in career. And, when I think of inspiring, I really look at Dr. Henry Gramion that passed away recently.
Just recently, I know.
Just recently. I had the pleasure, he's the dean, was dean at LSU, the past chair of the board for the American Dental Education Association. And I actually served on the board with him. So over the last several years, I got to know him very well. And for me, this was probably one of the kindest men that I've ever met, as well as he had just a sense of goodness, and his heart was just so open and kind. That really inspired me. How he treated people. Didn't matter who you were. He treated all people the same. And I truly believe at the end of the day, it's not a matter of how many plaques you have on the wall, the accolades you have. It's really that goodness and kindness that you show others, and just by being around him, that was just inspiring.
You know, I have to agree with you. He's one of those people that I only knew at a distance, but have watched his career, have been inspired by him as a human. And he was pretty amazing. I will have to agree with you wholeheartedly. I was part of the Boston Master Track group, which is, you know, part of the Academy of General Dentistry. And he came to teach for a weekend, one weekend, and he couldn't have been nicer and just, you know, open to answering any questions we had and supporting us. You know, you need anything, don't hesitate to call. And but he just was amazing. You know, just a pillar, I think. You're absolutely right. He's a great leader. Yeah,
Great leader.
absolutely. Have you had a moment in your time where you thought, oh my God, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, like an aha moment, like, oh my gosh, I've just done something that I've been meant to do?
You know what? This is so funny. I think, for me, that for being a social person, I am very blessed with being able to interact with people from so many different backgrounds and professions. And, for me, that's part of my aha moment because I'm very fortunate. Whether it's engineers inside the factory, a colonel at a military base, all those different areas. I enjoy that social interaction. And I also think because I'm remote and I do get to travel, I think that helps that aha moment because I'm not a 9 to 5 person. I'd much rather be on a different time schedule. You know what? I think for me, though, as I look at my career and people that I've met along the way, I think my aha moment, knowing what I've done in my career, it's going to come when I retire. I just think that it's going to come after. And then I'm going to look back and go, you know what? I did exactly what I was supposed to be doing in life. And I've met so many people, or I've impacted their lives, or I've done something. I just think that right now I'm just trugging along, and I enjoy it, right? And I get to meet so many good people. That's the aha now, but I think my overall aha moment will probably come when I retire.
I hope it doesn't take that long for you, but you have always impressed me every single time you come to the school. So let that be a guiding principle for you, that it's nice to see another woman in a leadership role within the dental education community. So thank you for doing that, really.
Well, thank you.
No, really, and I mean that sincerely. It's almost not expected because, there's certainly still more men in the field than there are women. But I will say that our entering class next year is over 60% female. So, the landscape is changing quite a bit. And I think that, industry has to take note of that and start putting more women into positions so that they can capture the audience that they're looking to capture, the audience that is going to be bigger and bigger as time goes on, I think.
I agree.
So what's your favorite way to relieve stress?
I have a Peloton. So I love using my Peloton, but I'm going to tell you, sitting at this desk for the last couple of months has been a little bit of a stressful, I think, piece for everybody. And for me, sometimes it's not a matter of, going to ride and choose a program. Sometimes I need to walk away from the computer. I need to just go pedal, calm down, kind of relieve that and come back. But also I enjoy long walks, just walking, putting my music in, just kind of looking at the outdoors. The weather's getting nicer. I do that on the weekends right now and during the week, depending upon how many phone calls. But I think try to stay active. I think the worst thing right now, what makes stress worse, has been sitting just stagnant at the computer, because there are some situations that you can't change and people want you to have answers. And I think sometimes it's better to walk away. And I like that my Peloton really does help. And it's been something that I've even tried to utilize when and if we do travel again. Who knows when that will be. But I've even tried to anticipate or use the long walks, traveling, kind of breaking up the day. So that's my stress, kind of calm myself down, and then I can always come back to work.
I have to agree with you. I know that we were in a lot of meetings before at the dental school. but at least I got up from my desk and I walked upstairs, or I went to a different room, or I saw different people, right? Now you're sitting in the same spot for hours and hours at a time. The screen might change, but you're sitting in the same spot. And some days it can be overwhelming, you know? And it was very different to be in the school during the emergency time where nobody was there. And then, so I'm sitting at my desk having these meetings with all these people, but nobody's there. So, it's been an interesting journey for sure. But I have to say that if I had to choose between the two, I think getting up and physically moving someplace makes a big difference. I really do.
Yeah. I've even run up and down my stairs a couple of times just to be moving because I felt like my legs were like, what's happening here from sitting so long? So
I agree. I agree. So do you have a personal mantra or motto that you live by?
I don't really have my own motto. I think other people have given me my motto. If you want something done, give it to a busy person. I think other people have kind of elected that to be my motto. But it's so funny because sometimes I'm sitting here and I see things come in and requests come in, and I always have that song in the back of my head from Kelly Clarkson. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So sometimes I think, wait a minute, somebody gave me that motto, and now I have a song playing. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but I do think that's also a sense that people have trust in you, right? If they want something done, give it to a busy person. So at some point, I've earned trust that somebody has said, you know what, she'll get it done. Let's give it to her. I believe she's going to get it done. So while at times it's overwhelming, you know what, I welcome the challenge because that does mean that somebody has the trust and appreciation for the work that I'm going to do to get it done.
Exactly. Good for you. Good for you. And I love that you have Kelly Clarkson singing in your ear. I think it's great. How about a guilty pleasure or a secret dream that you might want to share with the audience?
You know what? I love to cook. And, whether it's kind of working on a traditional family recipe that I don't really have the whole recipe and I need to figure it out, whether it's kind of inventing something new, cooking is really my relaxation. But I think for me, if I think of a secret dream, I would love to take cooking to like the next level. And meaning to be able to travel and cook in different regions around the world. I would, given the opportunity when we start traveling again, I would love to be able to spend an extended period of time in northern Italy or Tuscany and really kind of being involved in not only the food experience, I think, but the culture as well. That would be my dream.
I have to say I'd be right there with you because that's number one on my list too. Cooking and Italy. I think that not being able to go at this moment in time makes me want to go even more. And my partner Steve and I were talking about it this past weekend as well, that we really, really, really want to go to Italy within the next year. So I hope the same for you. I hope you get what you're dreaming about, and I hope we get a chance to go too. Nothing better than good Italian food. Oh my gosh. My mother was not Italian, but man, oh man, she could make a good Italian meal, that woman.
Oh, good.
Which makes us all happy, right? I think that that's the piece about it that women enjoy the most, those of us who really enjoy cooking, that it's the love that you put into it that makes it taste so good. And, the joy that it gives you to provide sustenance or a beautiful meal for somebody else. I think that it just brings us so much energy.
Yeah, and it's part of you. It's part of your heart.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, I can't thank you enough. Is there anything else you want to share with the audience that might be helpful for them as they move through their careers? And, especially like I had said early on, if there's somebody in the dental profession, whether it's assisting, hygiene, front office, that is interested in sales and thinks they might want to do that, a piece of advice that you might want to share with them on what to do.
You know what I have to, I have two things. I think the first thing that I will tell them is, if you want to get started in sales, I think number one, whatever you end up doing, whoever you end up interviewing with, always present yourself with confidence. I think so often people don't, and they feel that they might not be good enough, but go in there with confidence. Even if you don't have it, have an air about you. Make sure that you go there with your best foot forward. Knowledge is power too. don't be afraid to tell somebody what you know. You know, I do believe that folks sometimes are kind of scared or hesitant, saying, "Oh, this is my first job. I don't know if I should say this. I don't know if I." Be confident, and I think the other thing too is build relationships. You know, it is a matter of who you know and who you can help you along the way. I think that if you build relationships and the people that you meet, you make them part of your network. You never know. You just never know how they might come back to help you sometime, some way along down the line in your career. So I think don't ever underestimate that power of building relationships.
Two great pieces of advice. So thank you very much. Susan, it has been my honor to host you on the show. So thank you so much for your time and for being here and for sharing what it's been like to be in, the field of dentistry in a different profession outside of the usual female jobs that you could share with our audience. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much. This is really fun. So I appreciate you for thinking of me and having me. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you so much for listening to the Women in Dentistry podcast with Dr. MJ Hanlon. If you like our show and want to know more about us, check out our website, thewomenindentistry.com, or please leave us a review on iTunes. Join us for our next episode as we bring you another amazing woman leading the way for the next generation.